My goodness, the wall. Hitting a wall when you're talented, you're driven, you're successful, creative, and you're out there making it happen, and then something stops you cold and you hit a wall. Marisa, what you're here to tell us today is it doesn't mean that you're not talented or that you're not hardworking or that you're a failure. You're going to share with us today what it means when the creative high performers hit a wall. So, Marisa Handler, what can you tell us more about this?
Yeah. So that wall is a portal in disguise. It's really well disguised. It feels really solid. It can feel like 6-foot deep rock, but it's actually a doorway. And really, it's the reason it can feel so final and solid and like the end, like a dungeon, is because on some level, that's actually real. Like on some level, it is an end. It's an end to who you've been so far, but it's a portal to who you are becoming next. And unless you navigate that portal, you won't enter that next paradigm, right? So it's a place where, it's typically the place that people come to me, where they're like, I'm here. My God, I would help. One option when we hit this place is to just kind of shut down or go into collapse or like rest on our laurels, but not fully be satisfied and not really reach our full aliveness and potential. But if we can meet this skillfully with wisdom, ideally with good guidance, certainly in my case, that was helpful. It's a womb. It's going to lead to where we go next. And that can be a place that we actually are incapable of conceptualizing from where we are because we're in the current paradigm, right? And Einstein spoke to this. Many people have spoken to this. Like you cannot solve a problem at the same level it was created. It requires profound faith and trust, sometimes more than we think we have. It requires letting go of certain old ways of navigating, certain old neural pathways.
Right.
Then something else can come through us and unfold itself to us and take us where we need to go.
So I think that's really compelling. And when you say that people reach out to you and when they hit this wall or they're in this pit, that is when they reach out to you for help. So they're reaching out to you for help because not only are you a creative yourself, in terms of a musician, songwriter, lyricist, an author, all of that, but you are also a guide or a coach that in particular, please correct me where I'm wrong, but you work with creatives that find themselves stuck in hitting this wall and they're not finding the doorknob to walk through it into that new existence.
That's right. Yeah. I tend to work with not always I guess people I would call creatives, although they may not call themselves artists.
Right.
Their creativity may come through entrepreneurship, and they're typically high achievers and look pretty good already in the world's eyes in terms of what they've done. But either there's, and I imagine this is true for a lot of your listeners, there's a creative project team that's been sitting in the drawer for decades, or they have hit a wall. And they just don't know how to get through. I'm thinking of a South African, very successful, actually, businesswoman who came to me. She was working on a project to really elevate women in business in the global South. She was, a woman of great gifts, highly creative, spiritual, and she had really hit a wall. And we had to do some pretty deep work together. And then things really flowered, and she's at the London School of Economics right now. And her life is really expanding. But so it's anywhere from that to someone who's like, I'm a writer. I know it in my bones, but every time I sit down to do it, I just can't, or there's this book. I know I need to give it to the world. There's this album that whatever it is.
Right.
Help,
It's funny that you mentioned that because in preparing for today, there has been an after effect of, I think, probably what we went through with the pandemic, where a lot of creatives were feeling very stuck. And so like you were describing, like writer's block or a musician not creating or a painter not painting or, fill those in, which I do agree with you. Even being a strategist and a CEO, he needs to flow in that area as well. But I wanted to ask you, could you share with everyone your assessment of what's happening on a scale so large of creative people having blocks.
Yeah. Yeah. I think often when this is happening, it's because we're working from the persona. And it may have been a persona that's worked in the past, but not from true creativity. The persona is efficient. It's productive. Creativity is alive. It's unpredictable. It's our life force. On the most basic level, this is our life force. And so it requires a level of surrender. And particularly, I think, in these times where things can feel and are in many ways volatile, fragile systems that we have trusted and believed in our entire lives are failing, it's very easy and natural to go into fear, and we're going to grip. We're going to grip to things that have worked before.
Right.
But these times are asking more of us. They're asking us to come into something that is more fundamental, way more powerful, and that requires, again, a degree of letting go of old ways. And this can feel very counterintuitive, I imagine, to your listeners. Instead of pushing, this way is about receiving. It's about opening enough to be a channel to let what needs to come through you come through. And this can feel terrifying.
Right.
It can trigger our deepest trauma. We can go into heavy resistance and fear, all of which is completely natural and normal. And we really need to love these places when they come up. It's not about bypassing. It's not about just get out of the way. It's actually, these again are doorways.
Wait, Marisa, you can't hack. You can't just have a hack for it or a shortcut or no?
Sorry.
No.
The irony is this is the shortcut. It is actually more efficient in the long run to open to this. But it's not something where, you can just be like, okay, I'm going to sit down for 5 minutes and do my breathing exercises or whatever. And then I'm going to do the old way again. All of these things can be super helpful. But we do need to kind of allow ourselves to go through that portal. And where it's going to take us is in the long run, not only more efficient, but much more powerful as well.
So I would imagine it would be, this is an overused word, but more genuine. It would come from a place that is just more genuine in terms of the creativity.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, what I've seen over and over is, Marianne Williamson spoke to this, is that we're not afraid as much of our smallness as we are of our light, of our bigness.
Right.
Right. I mean, these are the places where we, at certain point, again, I see this over and over, at certain key junctures developmentally, we did what was required to survive. This might have been psychological survival. It might have actually been physical survival. And that meant shutting down life force to some extent. And so that's why it can feel very terrifying when we begin to open to it. But we have tremendous power and light inside each of us. And it does require some skillful navigating to begin to learn how to actually really let that move through us.
Right. I'm fascinated by this thought of, rather than push through, you're going to push through and break through, rather than that, to receive. And I would imagine that very difficult, especially when people are used to being a high performer. They're used to being successful. They're used to being driven. So that's the word itself. You're driving, you're making it happen and getting it from point A to point B. So when I think about receiving and rather than pushing, it makes me feel as if I would be out of control. And it makes me feel as if, what if I wait to receive something that never comes? Do you have any help for that?
I've yet to see that happen. I will say that.
Mhm.
I've yet to see that happen. I've worked with I've at this point worked with hundreds, if not thousands, of people through the teaching I've done. It is. I mean, that's what's scary. It is about surrendering control, but it's not about surrendering agency. And this can be a subtle, a subtle kind of discernment here. The reality is we aren't in control. We think we are. We have lots of things in place to tell us we are, whether it's our, devices or our, whatever it is, cross the road when the little man says go.
What do you mean? I'm in control? Yeah.
We don't have control, but we have
Right.
tremendous agency. And that means we get to, we have our life circumstances. We have our gifts. We have the ability to choose where we sit in relation to circumstance, and this isn't just about like opening full bore to everything and having no agency, because for some of us, if there's significant trauma, we really actually like the learning is around exercising agency. Like, okay, I opened to this much and now I'm going to put it down and go talk to my friend, go for a walk, watch puppy videos, like whatever, really no
Right.
judgment here. For others of us where there's a lot of shutting down or bypassing, it's more about actually the opening. And so it really is quite individual, this path, which is why guidance can be helpful here. And it's a kind of a bit of a dance, like ultimately the way I think about words like destiny and purpose is that we really are in co-creation with something greater. Whether you want to call that your life force, whether you want to call that God, the muse, the mystery, it's a co-creative process. So that's where I'm saying we don't have control, but we have a lot of agency. We get to take a step forward, take a step back. We're dancing. We're dancing with a partner.
Right. That's right. I had not ever thought of it that way, and that just makes so much sense right out of the gate. When to give a practical example, you mentioned when we were talking before our call that you have a certain schedule. You have a certain time set aside every day for creative pursuits, whether that's your authorship and writing or your music or working on anything that needs to be created in relation to your business enterprises. So that you're not saying that you're forcing it, but you're allowing the space and you're prioritizing it so it can come to you. Can you explain a little bit more around that?
Yeah. And this has taken some, work to get, everything I'm telling you, I'm speaking from, I'm my worst student,
or your best,
or my best, or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. It depends on the day and the time, right?
Totally.
That's how I am with myself.
Right. Yeah. So I have walked this path, and I'm thinking of the great Southern writer Flannery O'Connor, and she said, I sit down every day 9 to noon and it's basically, I'm paraphrasing, but she said, I make myself available. If an idea comes to me, I'm there for it. It often doesn't come, but if it comes, I'm there. And this was like a pretty prolific, genius writer. That's basically what I do. And that's my guidance as well when I work with people is make yourself available. Don't give yourself a grade. Don't judge. There are times I sit down and there's a lot that comes through. And there are other times that I'm struggling with a paragraph for a while, or right. I mean, it's variable. What matters is that I sat down and I gave myself to that time. We live in a world that puts such a high premium on productivity and creativity. It just doesn't work that way. There can be huge bursts where like there's sort of downloads, but then there are also times where it's like, okay, I'm not quite sure what comes next. Like I'm really facing the blank page. Okay, all right, I'm available. Like I'm immersing myself. For me, that can look, if I'm working on a song, it can look like just staying with the melody for a while, or just writing lyrics until something good comes. It can look like if I'm writing or working on a book, it can look like just reworking sentences that I've already written, or really immersing myself in the idea of what's coming next. So we tell people to follow their passion, and that's true, but really I think it's about giving ourselves permission. And that's kind of when we have a window like that in our lives, and for some people that's 10 minutes a day. If you're raising your children, or you're dealing with aging parents, or there's just or building a business, it can be a tiny window, but it's that window of permission that really can make all the difference.
When you think about that window of permission, what role does technology play in that?
Yeah, I mean, turn everything off as much as you can. I mean, I've been working some with Claude, which can be very generative. I think these tools really have their place. And, I'm watching myself in this, because I'm obviously the people are coming to me with questions as well around them. And I've done some writing around this as well. But it requires some discernment. But what I do know is that I do need a certain amount of just like a kind of a bubble, so turning the things off, knowing that there are going to be moments or stretches that I don't know what comes next. But this is really key. I mean, there's so many studies that have shown how key these periods of boredom, of just like being in the unknown are to genuine creative insight. So we have to let ourselves have those places, have those experiences of, I don't know what comes next, or just like, la-di-da, this is boring. Okay, I'm sitting on the cushion and like I'm doing what Marisa said, and then something comes. It's why people have eureka moments in the shower or when they're walking their dog. It's because we've let something go. We're not working on it with the prefrontal cortex, and other things can come through.
Right. So probably not a lot of technology and just allowing yourself to have that space. It is interesting. You mentioned being bored or just having that quiet and being okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I can give you the name of the philosopher for the show notes. He's a contemporary philosopher, but he basically writes about how, essentially what we do when we're in multitasking spaces that feel highly productive is we're recycling. But that genuine creative insight is actually associated with periods of high boredom.
Mm-hmm.
Very, it's not what we think, but it's what happens. Yeah.
It is funny, and it does, talking about counterintuitive, because this also sounds counterintuitive, but I know that one of my friends and former mentors that is a published songwriter, he wrote songs sporadically when he felt inspired, for years, and none of them were sold. When he finally sold his first song, it was after he time blocked for songwriting. So he looked at his calendar and he said, almost everything in my life is on the calendar except for songwriting. And that is what I say is my biggest priority. And yet it hasn't earned a spot on my calendar. And so when he put it in, and then started honoring it in the manner you described, very similar to the manner you described. Sometimes it would be amazing and it would flow through him, and other times it would not, is when he started to become published. And it's funny because I think if we stopped 10 people on the street, they would say, you cannot time block for creativity. That has to come to you when it comes to you. But
yeah, I disagree. And again, it can be 10 minutes a day. Like it can be small. But there's something about that commitment. Goethe, the German writer Goethe said, basically, when we commit, that's when the universe comes to meet us.
Exactly right.
That's when other forces are set in motion. And it's mysterious.
That is right.
I see this over and over. I cannot tell you how many people have said, I signed up to start working with you, and things just started dropping out of the... It's because of the commitment. Again, deeply mysterious, but there's something about whether it's blocking it out on the calendar or that is a commitment. That's like, I am consistently going to give myself over to this.
And it's funny you mentioned that particular passage because it's Matthew Ferry. He shared that with me. I'm going to link it in the description. So anyone who hasn't read that yet, it talks about that power of making the decision. And that once you decide, the universe moves in ways to allow that to come to fruition.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and he also shared, and I'm curious if this is your experience as well, just because you have your 3 hours per workday scheduled for your creativity and to allow that to come in, it doesn't mean that if you were so inspired at, 6:30 in the morning on a Sunday, that you wouldn't stop what you were doing and capture the lyrics to a song that came to you or a melody line. You would still grab your guitar and do it. You would capture it, but you are prioritizing and telling the universe, I am ready to receive and I will be here. And then you have time on task over time, and it will vary throughout your life.
But
right. The time will be there. You will be there, right?
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, things come through that, at other times. And what I've found for myself is when I'm deep in creative work, I mean, it is uncanny what shows up. I'll be working on a chapter and then I'll go to a restaurant and the name of, the restaurant across the street is the title of the chapter I'm working on. I mean, bizarre. I have so many instances of this.
Right.
And that's where I'm speaking to, it does. So things can show up and they show up in their own timing. And the muse, presents herself when she wants to, not when I think she should.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, there is this kind of co-creative energy that, synchronicity, serendipity, like someone I haven't heard from in years. These things keep happening.
Right. Well, it's funny with your book that you're currently working on having released, Sanctuary. It sounds like in that book, you address this in an even deeper manner.
That's right. Yeah. So one of the themes I teach on, which is related to everything we've been talking about, is the dark night of the soul. Having had my own experiences of the dark night, and then, having like really felt like in those experiences going from someone that looked very high achieving to just like, how am I going to get through the day? Basically, like, how do I get through the next hour?
Right.
I kind of came out of the closet because I wanted people to have less shame, because we pathologize these experiences in the West, and there can be, there can be a diagnosis, there can be something else going on, but usually there is something, there's what I see teaching on this is that when we're going through these times, they're happening on multiple levels. There is a psychological component. There's often a physical component. There's often illness or some limitation. That's been my experience, like hitting some kind of exhaustion. But there's also a spiritual component, and that's what too often gets overlooked. So the dark night of the soul, we think of it as a crisis of faith, and on some level it is, but it's also faith doing its deepest work. And the book that I'm writing now is about essentially that we're moving through this on a collective level here. We are seeing systems that we've trusted fall apart. Things are changing at incredibly rapid rates.
Right.
Yeah, that's what this book is on. And it's around how we can navigate this and how we can really open to the considerable gifts on offer in these times.
When you think about that, the gift and that creativity and being a co-creator, I will admit to you, I have had a few times where I was writing recently and I started feeling like, do I really have a story to tell? Aren't all the answers being answered now with large language models? Like, is it a voice that would be in the wilderness that no one is going to hear? I know I'm not a unicorn, right? So if I have those feelings, I'm sure others have similar types of feelings. Does that play into this?
Yes. It's funny you mentioned that, because I just taught a writing memoir workshop at Stanford, and you are most certainly not alone in thinking that. I think it's actually very common, like my story. So, well, I have a couple of things to say on that. One is LLMs they're not human. They don't have their own stories. They're getting better and better at telling stories, but it's interesting. I mean, I'm obviously following the literature on these things because it's fascinating to me. People are more and more craving, and I know this is true in the publishing market. I have agents telling me this, they're more and more craving what they know is distinctly, authentically human.
Right.
Because of, well, is this artificially produced?
Right.
And when it comes to telling your story, I mean, everyone's story is interesting. It's not so much it's about the degree of attention that we bring to it. The degree, like how deeply are we looking? What kind of attention are we bringing to this story? I've yet to meet a person who doesn't have interesting stories or an interesting story.
Right.
There are some that are more dramatic, but surely you've read a memoir or you've read an essay or maybe a poem or a story or where there's not huge drama in it, but there's this thing itself, the story, the way it's told, the voice is deeply compelling.
Yes.
Right. And that's about the attention that we pay to that, like how deeply we let ourselves really sink into that. That also requires, particularly if we're working with memoir, where we're often working with some of the ghosts from our past. We're writing our own, we're telling our own stories. This, by the way, speaking of agency, is putting ourselves in a position of tremendous agency. We really do get to be the one writing the story here, where we may have not felt that way in the past. Writing memoir inevitably brings up, it requires some courage, because we do have to look at some of the hard parts. And if we're going to bypass them or keep a safe distance, we're not doing our material true justice.
Right. I think about that as well, because I feel that so often, especially with some high performers and high achievers in any field, that there's a fear that if we share the real truth and we show some of the mistakes made or chronic issues that we still face, that people will think less of us, or we will lose some of what we've built. And so there's a fear around, well, I really want to tell my real story, but will that come at a high price?
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to really like love up that place. It's
Hmm.
so real. It's so real. And it takes tremendous courage to be vulnerable in these ways. I know for myself, it was terrifying when I first published an essay on having been in this breakdown dark night process. And what happened was that essay went viral, actually, in and this is what I've seen over and over again. But actually, I received zero. Nobody was like, I didn't get any criticism or judgment. I just got a lot of thanks.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's what I see over and over again. And I work with some people who are, people that you're reading in the New York Times or whatever. And they're saying things that sometimes, really do go against the grain, but really need to be said.
Yes.
And it takes huge courage. But over and over, what I see both in my own personal path and with clients and students is the amount of gratitude, is so outweighs any criticism or judgment. And it allows people to find you. It allows you to find your tribe and your tribe to find you. So it takes a lot of courage. We really want to love up the scared places inside us, and it will bring you more than you thought was possible.
Well, I agree with you entirely. And if you even barely look, just doing a brief search, you will see wildly successful people. And part of the reason that you would know their names now is because they were willing to share the failures, the disappointments, the habits, the losing everything or nearly losing everything and building over again. And it's because they are vulnerable. People find them. Like you said, they relate. And then they are able to say, well, if she did that, maybe I could do that with all of my faults and flaws and mistakes and bad habits and everything. So I think ultimately it's still very powerful if you can set that fear aside and share the real. Right, like to go
completely. And the persona, the mask, which comes at a real cost, is like, well, this isn't going to work. Like, look at this is how I've gotten this far by doing this.
Yes, that's right.
Right.
Yeah, we're tying back to what you said right at the beginning.
Exactly. It's not going to get you where you are capable, it's not going to get you where you can go. It's not going to get you. It may have gotten you from there to here, but it's not what's going to get you to the next level. It just isn't. And it's also exhausting. The persona, the mask, it's just tiring. It takes so much. Instead, we can open to something that's much deeper and more powerful and more alive. And it does mean letting go of certain things. It does mean vulnerability. It does mean opening up and kind of surrendering the illusion of control. But it will take you places I speak from lived experience. It will take you places you may not have dreamed you could go because you weren't able to see from that paradigm.
And you've experienced that yourself.
I have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did not think that I would be teaching on the theme of navigating the dark night of the soul or writing a book on it or working with people in the way that I do, which is, it's immensely rewarding work. I get to meet people in some of their deepest places and watch them really bloom, No, if you'd asked me at 25 or 30 even, I was at the Iowa Writers Workshop. I was a very high achieving person. And if you'd been like, oh yeah, I'm going to share the skeletons in my closet and fall apart and then help. No, I'd have no idea.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. If your today's self told your young self that, it'd be like, no.
Yeah.
And then here you are and so much richer for it.
That's right. That's right. And what I thought, and I've always on some level followed my heart. It's not that those things didn't have meaning to me, but I thought I'm just going to impress people into loving me, I'm just going to that is persona that, I'm just going to achieve my way into adulation or I don't know what exactly. Right.
Right.
And that's brittle. There's still parts of me that believe that. I want to be real here. And when they come up, I'm like, oh, sweetheart. Oh, of course you think, no, honey, yeah, right. I get it. But what actually came through when for me, I'm a hard nut to crack. It really took me being on my freaking knees, was so much more fulfilling in such a deeper way than where I thought I was going.
And now you already are a published author. You have at least 2 more books that are on the horizon. And I believe you also have a song that recently was published, correct?
Yeah. So I released a song recently called We Are Rising that is basically around all that is rising in these times. You can call it different words, the feminine rising, just deeper ways of being. I mean, actually, it's really very related to what we've been discussing. But the people and the movements and the shift that I see happening that doesn't make headlines, but
Right.
that's very real. Yeah.
And it's happening right now.
It's completely happening. Yeah. Yeah. It's happening in all these beautiful ways, whether it's, regenerative communities or just the arts being used to show new ways, different ways of living and being with each other, trauma work, somatic work. I mean, there's just, it goes on and on. Yeah.
So the changes, they're not necessarily grabbing the headlines, but it doesn't mean that they're not happening. It's actually happening right now.
It is happening. It's
And if
completely happening. And the way I see it, things falling apart, it's no different than on the personal level where we fall apart or we hit that huge wall. The gift of these times is that it's opening up space for other things to come through and new ways of being and relating and building to come through. And these have to be coming from deeper places. Joanna Macy, spoke of these times as the great turning to ways that are generative of life.
wonder if there's going to be, as you mentioned earlier, the desire to seek out people, because humans are fascinated by humans. We just are, right? There's that whole dynamic where we see human faces in inanimate objects because our brain is continually looking for other humans. But you mentioned earlier how people want to make sure if they're watching a video on YouTube that it's actually the two of us and we're real humans and we're, talking, and they are wanting to find that real story, that real memoir. I'm almost wondering if it's going to be a situation where once we see what's being created with what I'll just lump as AI, it is showing us that what we truly desire is more human connection. And I wonder if part of the turning is people making that conscious decision to click out of that YouTube video once they realize that's a voiceover and AI generated, there's not a human here, and seeking a similar topic with a person. I wonder if that's part of the turning.
I think that's already happening from what I'm reading. And I'm thinking also around Thich Nhat Hanh, the great Buddhist teacher who he said so memorable. The next Buddha is the Sangha. In other words, the next enlightened, leader. It's not one person. It's all of us. It's the whole community. And that's the change I see happening. And the new ways of being and doing, they have to be collective. They have to be generative. We have to, a lot of where things break down, and certainly this was true in my own experience, is this kind of like, I got to do it on my own. I got to do it alone. Like this kind of like hyper-capitalist mode of like each for himself or scarcity, and that's where breakdown happens. And it's also where we are forced to turn to each other.
Right.
And that's the gift. Like we have to, like for myself, I was like, I need help. I need whatever, a good therapist. I need mentors. I need guides. I need all of it. I need community to like, this is too much.
Community, right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's part of what you're building.
Yeah.
With others in your Live Your Creative Genius. So you have the Live Your Creative Genius, and could you share more about that? And what's happening for the people that are choosing to become a part of that?
Yeah, gladly. It's an in-depth creative coaching program. It's consistently gotten called life-changing. And what we do in that container is, it really is about building that paradigm shift that I've been speaking about. What I see again and again is it's like the gap between persona and genuine creativity is where the creative energy is leaking out, and so we begin, the whole first module is around receiving. It's like learning to receive, which it sounds odd, but we actually have to learn or relearn this in this culture because it's such a push, drive, go,
right.
do. So that's a whole chunk of, that's about a month. That's like really just around what's it even like to let go of the push, and begin to open to something that's deeper and bigger and let that move through us. Another key module in this is really looking at the obstacle as the path. This is so key to creativity. Like we hit that wall, or like something messes up the painting or whatever it might be. And, capitalist mode is like, oh my God, that mess, everything, like what do I do? How do, how do I produce? But if we actually let that be a doorway, and I see this in my own creative work, I see this in my healing work with myself, with others, it will take us where we need to go. So really looking at like, yeah, the obstacle is the path. The things that we've considered our personal demons, the ghosts from our paths, these are our boot camp. They are our preparation. Like we kind of need these places to get strong and clear enough to hold that level of energy, right? So we're doing really deep work in this program. And ultimately, there's a whole arc that leads towards actually, in a concrete way, living and being our creativity in the world. So it's not just about the product. What I want for graduates of that program and what I see is that it's actually a complete reorientation so that we emerge from that living from our creativity, like really doing that. It's not only about writing the book. That's part of it. And that happens. It's also about the next 5 books. It's also about like, how do we live in a way that we're actually oriented to this all the time? And it's not that we don't have bad days, that we don't, whatever, fall off the wagon, that obstacles don't come up. Like life happens.
That's right.
But it's about getting back on. It's about like, okay. And what I see over and over again is that this is the healing process. It's that we still get stuck, but we don't go down as deep and we don't get stuck as long.
Yes, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
That in itself is beautiful.
Yeah.
And I hope people hear that, because what I hear you saying is there are skills that you can learn that can help you not be down as low and not stay down as long. Those are skills that can be learned.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I teach on the theme of navigating the dark night of the soul. So as you can imagine,
right.
I work with people sometimes who are really, really in it. And these are skills. And, the way I work and what I recommend is like we are working on multiple levels. Like the nervous system needs to have some degree of safety before we can actually productively work with the material that's coming up. So sometimes with some people, it's really about building that container. And then, okay, but there are times where it's like, we actually need to just establish a ground of safety first.
Right.
Before we really can do that.
Before you can receive even.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. There has to be enough, mixing metaphors here, but there has to be enough ground to let that channel begin to open. And if we don't have enough ground, if there isn't enough trust, we can't like punish ourselves for not opening. It's just on the level of the nervous system, the most basic level of the body, the body-mind connection. Survival is always going to come first. Always.
Yep.
Yeah. It's going to override. The nervous system doesn't care if we're completely miserable. It cares that we're surviving.
That's right. That's exactly right.
It doesn't care if we're not creative. There are some people, and live your creative genius. That first module is actually very much about the work is very nervous system oriented. No matter where we're beginning from, no matter whether we have capital T trauma or not, we still need to find that ground internally to be able to begin to open, and then ultimately to hold really the tremendous energy that we can let come through us.
So have you encountered in your work someone who truly is spent? Has someone come to you and said, I need help, I've hit a wall, I've hit a ceiling, I'm in a pit, I'm in the darkest hour, and truly they're spent?
Yeah, I mean, I've been that person. And when that happened to me, I was 33. I had a Fulbright to work on my novel in India. I just graduated from the Iowa Writers Workshop, the best program in the country. I was like, I'm all set here. And then I was in Varanasi, India, and I completely fell apart. I was like, it was a perfect storm. I found a lump in my breast. I couldn't find an apartment. I stopped sleeping at a certain point, and there was some significant trauma that needed to be worked through, but I was completely exhausted. And the only model that I'd had up till then for creating was like, well, okay, you sit down at the page and you do the work, because that's what I'd taught. And I was completely incapable of that. And I ended up cutting the Fulbright short and coming back and just really from being on my knees, like, I mean, I was getting dressed in the morning was tired. Like, I was like, I don't think I have energy to get dressed. I was that exhausted. And that's where Live Your Creative Genius was born. And that's where all of this work was born, was like, I was like, write a novel? Like, I can't even put a sentence together right now. I had to surrender. I had to let go. And what began to move through, and it was slow, and it was, bits and pieces, and, and I mean, like, I was like staying inside and like taking myself out for a nightly walk when I was like, it just felt easier to be out when it was dark. And I mean, going to the grocery store was scary. It was that level. But that's where I began to open to something different. And, started understanding that actually creative process matters as much, if not more, than the product. And ultimately began to, that was the birth of a body of work that I then, a few years later began to teach at Stanford, and began to like build out into what it is now.
Right.
So yes, I have. Again, I work as both a creative and a life coach. I meet people where they're at, and there are times where someone just really needs to be held through a process. And it's not a time to think about producing. It just isn't.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're with them while they're in that place.
Yes. And what they will produce has everything to do with letting themselves be worked by that place. If you're resisting that and trying to get back to normal, and believe me, I know that place well, you're not letting yourself be transformed. And that crucible is going to shape who you are. And that requires a degree of surrender. This is where I say support is crucial, because again, if we are carrying quite a bit of trauma, we need enough safety to surrender in our system. We need enough ground and safety in our system to surrender. And that work needs to be relational, because the wounds are relational.
Right.
That is not going to come. It's not going to happen through, can I just meditate my way through this? Or, or just like grit my teeth, probably for your listeners, they're used to like grit. Okay, I'm just going to
white knuckle.
Exactly. Pull myself up by my bootstraps, go. No, like it's actually it's a sign of like growth to reach out in that place and say like, I actually need help here. And because that wounding is relational, the healing has to be relational.
Relational.
Like we actually need, in cases like that, it's required, I would say, whether that's a good coach, a good therapist, whatever.
Both. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
What I've run into with my coaching business is sometimes people are spent and they're in the pit and they've hit the wall or the ceiling or whatever was in their way, right? And they're just stuck treading water. And there is a fear around relationships. There's a fear of letting go, and that if they grow and change, they're going to lose people they love. And they have to have that faith that they will meet new people in the event that people leave. But how often do you see that prolonging the recuperation or prolonging the fear of losing relationships? Because a lot of people don't like when you change.
Yeah.
So is
right.
that something that really creates issues that you've seen?
Yeah, it can be. It can be. And the reality is that when we do change, we may lose some relationships. More what I have seen is that the relationships that are meant to stay shift. The relationships, ultimately, we want to be in healthy relationships with people who genuinely want the best for us,
Right.
even if that doesn't look like the way they're comfortable relating to us now.
Right.
And that can be a real learning curve. And that is courageous work to say, actually, I need you to meet me in a different way. And I know for myself, when I've been in a dark night, there have been periods of withdrawal, like periods where I'm like, I actually need to just not be in relationship with you for a while. I love you. I'm doing okay over here. I got things covered, and I'll be in touch. And that can be it has been very painful for me. It can certainly be very painful. I know it's been painful for the person on the receiving end, and it's been necessary.
Yes.
And I think partly this takes a leap of courage, which is why I say having a guide in this time is key. Having someone who's like, I got your back. You're going to be okay, so that we can move through this passage. And ultimately, if there are relationships that need to fall away, come into relationships with people who are genuinely interested in who who we actually are, not
Right.
who we've performed as being. A lot of women are often in roles of emotional caretaking, or mostly I work with women. Mostly it's women who come to me. And often it's about like, yeah, let's turn the let's turn the lens back on us for a change. Let's bring that, like, we're so good at taking care of everybody else, and it was probably the survival strategy. And yeah, some relationships need to change, but it's part of, again, it's like, it's kind of that boot camp, like, because when that is the case and when people are exhausted, usually it is because there's been a place of really ignoring their own needs in order to cater to everybody else's. And so partly it's like we need to learn to recognize, like, first of all, recognize that we even have needs.
Right.
Then recognize like what those needs are, and then begin to communicate those to others.
Yeah.
And sometimes we are surprised by how people can meet us in our lives. I see this, the partner that's like, okay, this is a challenge for me, but I do want you to be happy, and I do want to stay married to you, or whatever the case is. I'm going to make an effort, like, or let's go to couples therapy, or whatever it is.
Right.
But that work is, again, it's sort of the boot camp and the preparation to that next level of who we're becoming.
Well, it sounds like the community that you have with the Live Your Creative Genius graduates and the entire structure of that cohort, people that are going through that will have some fresh relationships.
Yeah,
that
that's
could help to displace the feelings of loss in the event that a friend or a key relationship is uncomfortable or disagrees or doesn't want you to change what they want you to keep doing. And,
That's exactly right. And that's actually why at a certain point I realized, like, this work that I'm doing one-on-one is beautiful and powerful, but there's an element in community that adds a whole other dimension where they're holding each other. They're supporting each other. And there are lifelong friendships that have come out of this program.
I am sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are, I mean, a lot of women are still very connected to the other women in it.
It's an amplifier.
Completely.
It's an amplifier. Yeah.
Yeah. And they have there's the option of a creative partner. So we are beings who, when we're in our heart, when we're aligned, we love to give and we love to receive. Like, these both are so key. We often have to learn the receiving part.
Right.
But it's amazing to me how they, like, because I get to teach and witness, like, just how they step up for each other. We want to do this. And so it does. It gives a new paradigm. Like, this is actually what's possible. And for some of the participants coming in, that itself is life-changing.
So, Marisa, what if some people are listening to us now? I'm assuming they're creative. Even if they're in business, they probably have suppressed creative desire to do more. What if someone, and I know that there's an audience for everything, right? There is someone that will appreciate everything. I believe that. But what if someone believes they are talented and creative, and yet there's a very, very small audience for what they may want? Is the gift still in the creation itself? So if they're not talented, I don't know how to say it. I don't know how to. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
I do know what you're saying. Yeah. I'm thinking of, I think I know what you're saying. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm thinking of Thelonious Monk. I quote this all the time. Great, great, great jazz pianist, composer. And he said, a genius is a person most like himself. I love that so much because I believe we all have genius, actually.
Yes.
That can be, I'm thinking of my sister who's like a genius mother. I mean, she's many other things as well, but it can manifest in different ways.
Different ways, yes.
Completely. And really coming into our creativity, it's not so much self-expression as it is self-excavation. It's really about, like, if I'm trying to fit myself into the box of that person over there, I'm probably going to be striking out. I'm probably not good. It's probably not going to resonate. So often when I'm working with people, there's some people that come in knowing exactly what they want to do and how, but often it's about, like, and that's a process of discovery. It's exciting, actually. Like, we're discovering this together. Where is the genius? And it's some combination of passion, gift, and where we're just drawn, like purpose. And so I do believe we are all creative, and that can emerge in very, very, very different ways that we don't typically think of as creative. I mean, entrepreneurs are some of the most creative people that I know, really.
Right.
And yes, there is absolutely an audience. And the closer you get to your genius, the more they're going to be able to find and recognize you again.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. yeah, there's so many different ways of putting that out in the world these days.
I think that's what I was hoping to dig to, that I was having trouble digging to. Sometimes if you are feeling like you're talentless, you've got genius and talent, you may be putting it in the wrong vessel or the wrong direction.
That's right.
And so regroup, and maybe you're not a novelist, maybe you're a songwriter.
That's right.
Or maybe you're not either, and you start pottery. So if you have I agree with you. I believe we all have talents and we all have genius that is within us. And it's, do we choose to tap into it in a manner that will allow it to flow through?
Completely. And we tend to think, again, even people who do identify themselves as artists sometimes come to me thinking like, the creativity is the thing we do when we've taken care of everything else. But actually, creativity is the thing that makes everything possible. It really is. It's like when we're tapped into that and we're open to that and it's alive and that life force is flowing. There are testimonials on my pages that say this better than I do. But what I've seen with the clients is that other things in their lives begin to shift that sometimes don't even feel related. Like all of a sudden, my relationship with my child is better because we're opening to this deep force, this deep energy. And so it's going to kind of shift. It's seismic. It has the power to shift multiple things in our lives when we really can let it be here and let it move.
And if you're willing to face the fear of the changes that may occur, there's so much waiting for you on the other side.
Right. That's right. That's totally right. Face the fear and not in a way that is manageable, in a way that the nervous system can digest and process. The nervous system tends to work in manageable bites. This isn't about plunging ourselves into terror or this is not, that doesn't work in the long term, actually. We tend to think like catharsis is, but yes, it's facing the fear and in a way that's skillful and working with the resistance in a way that's wise. It can actually be a gentle process. It's different for different people. We are each different. We come in with different gifts, different challenges. But fear is usually worse than what's underneath the fear. We think it's so scary. And if we look at this place, it's going to, kill us. It's going to annihilate us. It's going to collapse us. It's going to make us ineffective. And that fear is, again, this is why I'm like, we really want to love that place up, because at some point, maybe when we were 5 years old, it actually would have done that.
Right.
It actually would have, which is why it can feel as scary, as, threatening to enter some of these places. Reality is, as adults, it won't. But because these places are hardwired for nervous system reasons into us, we're like, oh my God, this is like, it's not actually gonna do that, but it can feel like that. Yeah.
Well, I think that it's very fascinating to have these options, and anyone who wants to connect with you anywhere you're consuming this podcast, they'll be able to. As I mentioned, I think anyone who's stayed with us in this conversation this long, they are either creative in the moment or they're feeling as if they have dormant creativity within them. I would not be surprised if there were not some high-performing, successful salespeople or realtors, or that they have put any creative side. By the way, as you and I've said multiple times, it's coming out in your business. If you're building a huge business, the creativity is there. But it's not as satisfying in the same way. I've gone through spells where I've gone, 18 months without sewing, or, 3 years without painting, or I stop listening to music as often as I enjoy listening to music. And I always can tell when it's been too long, and then I recaptivate it, or dancing, like whatever it is. So if someone is listening to this and they're saying, all I am doing is getting up, I'm on the treadmill of life, getting up, getting out of the house, getting to work, taking care of the clients, doing that, going to the dentist, laundry, food, doom scroll, play a Candy Crush, go to bed half an hour too late because I won't put my phone down. And they're like, where on earth could I work that in? And why should I work that in? I'm not going to make money to support my life with my creativity. Why should I do that? And how could I do that? Do you have anything to say to someone in that spot?
I have a lot to say. So I think, first of all, make time for it because it's going to reconnect you to what matters most in your life and in life. Offer a free breakthrough session. Apply for one of those. If you're curious, I'm sure there'll be a link in the show notes. Reach out and we'll have a conversation. We'll talk about what's getting in the way, what the vision is. I'll give you some recommendations to get there. And we can talk about possibly working together. So number one, like, let it be a priority and find even a little bit of time for it. Number two, reach out. And number three, start with the body. So the body is, gosh, we so often ignore it, or are we like, okay, this is this thing I need to feed and exercise and like, it's this kind of like thing that like gets us to what we need to get to. And if we more or less treat it well, will get us through the day. But the body has so much information. And probably if it's the person you're describing, when you start being like, well, what might my body want? It might be like, it just wants to rest.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But, yeah, and just have a bit of a break. But at some point, something's going to come through and it might be like, yeah, that song that I haven't listened to in a while, or I want to taste something delicious, or I want to just meander down the street, or I want to like get a little curious as to what below the mind, if possible. And, we have different levels of access to the body, right? So it might just be like, there's a little energy in my feet, or God, my body, everything feels crappy, but my hands feel okay. Actually, they kind of feel good, like interesting. That's a good place to begin. It's just what information is there. And it'll usually take you and it's not going to come through the, like, again, the prefrontal cortex. That's like, it'll be a good idea to eat dinner soon, but it'll be like,
what's in the freezer?
Exactly. Exactly. It'll be like this little burst of like, I want to go sit in the garden for a bit and actually like look at the flowers, or that bird song out the window, or it might be like, whoa, there's all this energy and I actually want to dance around my living room for a while. I'm going to put on some hip hop and get down. It's going to be variable, but the body always has good information. Yeah.
And it's not ever, in my opinion, too late. If you're above ground today,
no, I've worked with people in their 80s.
You have the opportunity to make it happen.
Yeah, to me, it's not about when, it's about if.
Yeah.
Because again, I have taught workshops. I'm thinking about this memoir workshop I just taught. There were 2 participants in their 80s.
Wow.
2 women who were like, they were both amazing. They were like, yeah, I'm ready to write my story.
Right.
I've done the things I've done this, I've done that. I've raised a family, had a career, whatever the thing is. And I'm ready.
Yeah.
And beautiful.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being our guest today. I could talk to you for hours and it's fascinating. And as you and I agreed earlier, everyone has a genius and something to share. And if you share it and you touch, I know this, people poo-poo this idea, but if it is meaningful to one person, then that was worthwhile. And the one person could be yourself.
Yeah. If it reconnects you with who you are in the depths, with your heart, with your passion. I really genuinely believe we're all connected. And a lot of what happens is below the sort of materialist level of seeing things. You just don't know who it touches. And also, I think when we meet people who really are living from that place, we feel it. We're drawn to them. We know it.
And we're able to identify it faster and easier the more we're exposed to artificiality.
That's true. Yeah.
Well, it's incredible to meet you. I'm really looking forward to Sanctuary coming out, and I am going to be on alert for that. If people want to hear We Are Rising, is that on Spotify or where can they find that?
It's on all the things. So Spotify, iTunes, that.
Perfect.
That and other songs.
And you have other published books. So again, if you want to get involved in Marisa Handler's world, you'll be able to do that wherever you're consuming this podcast. We will have links to everything that you have. I'm going to include a link to that excerpt about the universe and when you decide and how things will align. Marisa, I just want to thank you for sharing all of this with us because I think it's more important than we realize.
Thank you so much, Bridget. It's been a real pleasure. Yeah, really genuinely has. one other thing I haven't mentioned, and actually this is something that I made with Claude, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a creative archetypes quiz, which is a really fun way to enter some of this work. It's like a 5-minute quiz to find out which creative archetype yours is, and
I
gives a
love quizzes.
yeah, great. It's actually really it's fun and kind of surprisingly spot on. Yeah.
And that's on your website?
Is it on my website? I'm not sure, but I'll give it to you for the show notes, so it'll be there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. And if you're listening to this episode of The Inner Estate, I would love for you to comment below how you're going to allow your creativity to shine through and what touched you from this conversation. And Marisa, again, thank you for being here today.
Thanks so much, Bridget, for having me.